It's over. We're finished. We've lost.
No. No, there's still a way. There's one solution left. I'm afraid we're forced to use it.
What?
Starcrash.
Fourth dimensional attack.
Yes. If we can re-enter space at the precise moment, the impact of surprise upon the Count will be so overwhelming that he cannot halt us.
But Father, there is no weapon powerful enough.
Oh, yes, there is. The floating city.
The floating city?
Yes, I know. Although we destroy its hope, its future, I'm afraid we must sacrifice it by setting it towards the Count's fortress. It's our only way. And now you must help me. Both of you. Go and direct its course.
And hello everybody, welcome to definitely episode 7 of Wild Wild Podcast. And I'm here as ever with my dutiful co-host Rod.
Hello.
I notice I said dutiful. It sounds a little bit like beautiful, but it was dutiful.
Well, we both know I'm not beautiful, so thank you for the compliment that you could level and be honest about. So
yeah, there you go. And today we are doing the we've covered a couple of classics, we've covered a couple of not so classics. But I would say this one is perhaps the biggest of the bunch, today's movie, but we'll get to that in a second. But perhaps, Rod, first of all, how are you, and is there anything you want to fill us in on anything cult related that you've been doing recently? By which I mean films, obviously, not those religions that you've been involved in.
Not those odd religions that I tend to dabble in. The weekly drinking of the blood is going well. No, as far as as far as related to science fiction, I've been watching a few odd things here and there. The strange thing is that doing this series of films with you has caused me, for no good reason whatsoever, to dabble around and rewatch some stuff from the same period that is also science fiction. So I suffered my way through the film The Black Hole again recently, and just marveled at how beautiful it is, how glorious it is, and how just amazingly attractive it is visually, how wonderful the score is, and just how miserable the script is. It's kind of amazing. There's a Blu-ray of the film available, but only if you're part of the Disney Movie Club, which I joined a few years back because I wanted to get 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea on Blu-ray, and that's apparently the only way to get that. And I've stayed in the club simply because they do have these exclusives that they issue, and The Black Hole was one of them. Scarecrow of Romney Marsh. There's a number of things like that they've put out on Blu-ray, but only exclusively directly from Disney. So if you go looking on eBay, folks, for the Blu-ray of The Black Hole, someone's going to jack the price up to, last time I checked, around $65.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Just join the Disney Club and you can buy it for like $20.
Even better, it's available to stream on Disney Plus.
Exactly.
So if you have Disney Plus, you can. Although funnily, so they've got that one on there. They have got 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea on there, but they haven't got the Scarecrow of Romney Marsh. So you definitely have to sign to join the secret society to get that one.
Oh, and Scarecrow of Romney Marsh is an absolute gem. Absolutely one of my favorite films of all time. I just absolutely love the film. Yeah,
I'm very grateful to you for getting me a copy of that, and I've been visiting locations because it was all shot fairly close to where I live, and we went on holiday there just a couple of weeks ago, and I was looking at places and going, oh yeah, look, that's where he was. I went, yeah, actually, as an update to that. So I went last year to the same place. This year I went to the church, the church where Dr. Sin is the minister, and the church was open this time, so I could go inside, which was pretty cool. And apparently Disney paid for the church to be restored, the interior of the church, because they did film it inside the church.
Oh wow.
It hasn't changed since, so it's still exactly the same as it is in the movie, which is pretty cool. So I got to go in and have a look around.
Nice.
So that was fun. But anyway, yeah, so that's a good one. Black Hole, I've still never actually seen it. It's one of the films, when I got Disney Plus, I was thinking, okay, finally, I'm going to watch The Black Hole. Here we are now, a year and a half later, and I still haven't. But I will, because it does look, like you said, from the things that you see from it, it looks pretty stunning. But
it's visually glorious, and the score by John Barry is magnificent. But the script is there are several good scenes of dialogue in the movie, especially when Maximilian Schell and Anthony Perkins are talking, and when the two of them are acting back and forth. Some of those scenes are very well written, but the rest of the film, all the dialogue is just miserable, and it makes it was Disney's first PG rated film, and they made a big deal out of it. And it's PG rated because, of course, someone says damn and someone says hell. So wow. But
Walt Disney would have been spinning in his grave.
Well, he probably would have been spinning in his grave because they started the production without a finished script, which is insane. And of course, that's what's been fascinating me about The Black Hole is I have been digging, and I already knew that the novelization that came out of the film at the time had a completely different ending because, of course, the guy who wrote it had to come up with something because he was working from an unfinished script. Right. And then there turns out to have been 2 different comic book adaptations, and each one of them has a different ending as well. So essentially, it's a movie that is kind of like choose your own adventure. If you when you reach the ending, depending on which version you want to submit yourself to. But the really fascinating part is that I only learned recently about the second comic adaptation, which was actually done originally as a comic strip in France, and it was done by Jack Kirby, no less.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, completely nuts. The man who created the Marvel Universe, pretty much, did an adaptation of The Black Hole in France. So, well,
why not? I mean, I suppose, a job's a job.
Yeah,
why not?
Yeah. But you can find this stuff all online, people, if you search dutifully, or if you just go to my blog page, the Bloody Pit of Rod. I've posted up links to where you can find an English version of the Jack Kirby comic adaptation, and also scans of the adaptation that was done here domestically in the United States of the movie as well. So if you would like to explore the various endings of The Black Hole, no pun intended, and you can do so.
Thank you. Yeah, that's that needs to go higher up my watch list. I've got the soundtrack album and everything, but just never quite got around to it. But it's interesting, again, it all comes out around this period, which is what we're talking about in this episode, where everybody was rushing to do a Star Wars. And of course, little did Disney know that 40 years later they would just own Star Wars and would be making Star Wars films to the rate of about one a week. But yeah, interesting that everybody was trying to get in on the act. Wasn't it around this same time that we had that weird semi-sequel to 2001, 2010?
Oh, no, 2010 came along in...
Or was that slightly later?
Oh, geez. When did that... It came out... Wasn't that in the 80s?
Well, okay. That always felt a little bit like...
Now I can't remember. I enjoyed it because it's an adaptation of a sequel novel written by Arthur Clarke. But
I was 1984. There we go.
Oh, it was 84. Okay, so it was the 80s.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that always felt to me like something that got commissioned purely because of the success of Star Wars. I mean, by 1984, we've had all 3 films, and people are looking around for other properties that they can kind of try and target towards that audience. But I don't know. It's quite a bit more action-packed than 2001.
Well, I thought it was fascinating because having read the novels, they take some liberties. But what was great is that Clark wrote a couple of sequels, sequential sequels to 2001. And what was great is that I had read the novels before, around that same time. And one of the things that I was amusingly telling people is like, trust me, they'll never make the 3rd film if they want to follow along with Clark's novels, because the 3rd film is essentially unfilmable and would make absolutely no money. So,
well, there are plenty of other films that have been made out of similar properties, but I suppose. But yeah. It's unlikely that they would bring that back now. Anyway, so yeah, we're talking about Star Wars, and in this episode and the next episode, what we would, I think, quite accurately call Star Wars rip-offs.
Yes.
And I think both films, there's no secret about the fact that they were made specifically to cash in on the success of Star Wars. So today we're talking about Starcrash.
Dun, dun, dun.
The film which the theme music for this is what inspired the theme for the podcast. So every week, every episode, you've been hearing a cover version of the Starcrash theme. So I'm going to have another go at mangling the Italian title.
Ooh.
It's called Scontri Stellari Oltre la Terza Dimensione, which I believe means star clashes or star fights or star battles beyond the 3rd dimension. Something like that, which is quite fun. I mean, the whole Starcrash thing, we'll get to that later, but it doesn't really make any sense. But I mean, in this film, I'll just, spoiler alert, you don't see any stars crash.
No.
I mean, I'm willing to be proven wrong, but I'm pretty sure we never see a star crash at all.
No, and there does seem to be, it just seems to have been a desire to have the word star in the title.
Well, very reasonable too.
Yeah.
Why not? So the story goes that Luigi Cozzi, the director of this wonderful film, he was approached by an Italian producer wanting to make very quickly to make a film based on the success of Star Wars. Now, at this point, Star Wars was out in America and was a huge hit. But in those days, it's hard to believe now, but in those days, films would take 6 months or more, sometimes even a year, to get released in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember when I was growing up, hearing about American movies and having to wait months for them to come out here. And that was pretty much standard, which was very weird. Like Jaws, for example, came out in the UK in December, whereas it's very clearly a summer film.
Wow, yeah, exactly.
But it was just because of that standard 6-month release gap between America and Europe. I don't really understand why, but there you go. Anyway, so when Luigi Cozzi was approached to do a version of Star Wars, he hadn't seen it it wasn't available to watch in Italy, and of course no one's going to fly him to America to watch it. This is being done very cheaply. But what they did get was the novelization of Star Wars. So there was a book. So they gave him a copy of the book and said basically, here you go, we want you to make something like this, but obviously on a lot less money.
Yes.
And then, so meanwhile, so this is being set up by this producer, and eventually there's in the book here, I don't want to tell the whole story because you can find out the story in plenty of different forms, but basically it was co-funded. It was a production with AIP, American International.
Yeah.
Famously, Roger Corman made a lot of films for AIP back in the 60s before he went independent. But AIP is still going. This is one of the last films actually that AIP made when Sam Arkoff, I think by this point Sam Arkoff and James Nicholson had sort of separated and gone their separate ways.
Yeah.
And Sam Arkoff was still running AIP, but he was about to sell it, and AIP was basically about to close. So this is one of the last films that they were involved with. But then when they saw the final film, they lost confidence in it and sold it to Roger Corman.
I can't imagine why they lost confidence.
Yeah. Ultimately, Starcrash became a Roger Corman New World Pictures film. But so it went through this rather convoluted production process. So it's an Italian film, directed in Italy, but with an mostly an American cast, certainly, or a British-speaking cast, which partly came through the AIP connection, which is why we get Marjo Gortner and David Hasselhoff end up in here, which is pretty funny. But yeah, so Luigi Cozzi, he goes away, he writes this script. Now he is much more interested in film, and he talks very openly about the Ray Harryhausen influence on him. And of course, around this time, Ray Harryhausen was developing a film called Sinbad on Mars, which would have been a follow-up to Sinbad in the Eye of the Tiger, I think, if that's the third. I think that's the third one.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So he was planning a space set Sinbad film, which would have fit perfectly with the whole Star Wars boom. But it was proving it was going to be too expensive, and that kind of fell through. But this film, I feel, really does. This is like, because I think there is a story of Sinbad on Mars, like there is a book about anyway, I think. But Starcrash feels very much like one of Ray Harryhausen's Sinbad movies, mixed with Barbarella and then put in space with a little bit of Star Wars. There's kind of all of those influences going on. The Harryhausen influence especially, as we get into the plot.
Well, that's the thing about Luigi Cozzi, or Lewis Coates, as his Americanized pseudonym would be.
Of course, Lewis Coates.
Well, that's the thing about his genre films. I have a lot of affection, not just for this film. I have tons of affection for this film, but I also have a lot of affection for his less well-known films like Alien Contamination and stuff like this. That are these science fiction laced and fantasy films that he made, that he somehow managed to convince someone to allow him to make, like his two Hercules films in the early 80s with Lou Ferrigno.
I mean, even the Hercules films feel like Star Wars movies as well.
They're
much
weird
more like
elements.
sci-fi.
Yeah. They have weird elements that seem as if some of the special effects in this movie were like dry runs, or as if the only way to accomplish some of the stuff that he wanted to accomplish in the fantasy setting of a Hercules film was to somehow just kind of ape the stuff that had already proven semi-successful in a film like this. So it's the odd mechanical creatures and stuff that show up in the Hercules movies, which make absolutely no sense given that it's a complete fantasy scenario. It's stuff that you can see the prototypes of here, and once you get on the same wavelength of what he's trying to do, which is kind of a Ray Harryhausen movie in space on less than a quarter of the budget that Harryhausen would have had, or maybe even less than an eighth of the budget that he would have had. You can understand why this is seen with a lot of affection through a lot of fans' eyes. This is this is a love letter to that kind of movie, as misguided and bizarrely done as it is.
Luigi Cozzi he's also, I'm sure many listeners will know, he's a real champion of the fantasy horror genres, to the point where in the last, I don't know how long it's been now, 20 years or more maybe, he's primarily, his day job now is running a shop in Rome called Profondo Rosso, that has a very, what has to be said, a very ratty, kind of flea-bitten Dario Argento museum in the basement. And I've been there a couple of times, and you're like down in these vaults under the shop, and everything's a bit damp and a bit ratty, and it's called the Dario Argento Museum, but there's all kinds of crap down there, including some stuff from at least one of the Hercules films. And it's like walking through a traveling fun fairs horror, like Ghost Train. And it plays there's a tape. So basically when you go down there, he hits play up on the desk, and then you've got this voiceover talking you through this this museum in air quotes, but it's pretty funny. It's worth experiencing. But because him and Dario are clearly very good mates. So he's got this shop that sells. It's weird. It's like a fancy dress shop and a bookshop with this very odd, slightly damp museum down in the wine cellar. So
it's such a strange way to describe it. Now I've always had the desire to go to Rome and visit the place, but at the same time now it's one of those things where it's like, I'm better prepared mentally for what I'm going to experience if I ever make it. So good.
Yes, you've got to put his place high on your list. Although I will say that I've been to Rome 3 times, and it was only on the 3rd visit that I finally found the place open with Luigi Cozzi behind the counter. So, because it only opens about 4 hours a day, and he's not always there, obviously. Yeah. I think the one time I went there, he was off directing another movie or something. Or maybe he was just on his lunch break. It's hard to tell. But
those Roman lunch breaks can be hours and days long. So.
Exactly. So it took persistence, but I finally caught him. And when I did, what was really bizarre was, and I wish I'd realised this at the time, but I didn't realise it until about 2 hours later when I'd got back to my my room. So I bought from him the Blu-ray that he has just had put out in Italy. So there's a new collector's edition of Starcrash that you can buy in his shop. And so I very excitedly bought it from him, and he signed it for me and all this stuff. And when I bought it, he told me how there's some new extras on there, and there's a 90-minute documentary about him on here called Fantasticozzi, which is cool. So he's telling me about all this stuff, and he said, and all the new extras have got English subtitles. And so I was like, great. And then so I get home, I put it on, and there's no English subtitles on this thing at all.
Oh,
it's like,
Luigi got you.
He got me again. An Italian film not quite delivering what it promised. What a surprise!
Oh, yeah, what a shocker there. Well, I mean,
so it's a shame because there's some cool stuff on here, but my Italian is nowhere near ready to translate any of it. But anyway, so the day that I was there, when I got home, I happened to look up Starcrash on the IMDb and realised that I had been there on the exact 40th anniversary of when Starcrash came out.
Oh, wow.
I know. So, and he obviously didn't know. He doesn't have a calendar, I suppose, with the release date anniversaries of all of his movies. But he should. I mean, I would.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it's quite cool that I bought this off him on the 40th anniversary of when the film came out, even if neither of us were aware of it at the time.
Well,
but
out of curiosity, when did you first see Starcrash?
Not that many years ago. Well, basically, it was when I was just about to mention when the Blu-ray came out in America, the Shout Factory, under the banner of Roger Corman's Cult Classics. So they put it out back in, I want to say 2012, maybe.
I can't remember. It's been a number of years now, though.
Yeah. What was great was this Blu-ray, which is fantastic, by the way. And if you don't have it, this is the one to get. It's it was out. So Starcrash was available on Blu-ray before Star Wars was available on Blu-ray, which always amused me terribly.
Yes.
You know, I remember at the time they were talking about the original, especially the original Star Wars. Oh, you know, we don't have the original negative anymore, and blah blah blah. It took them years, but in the meantime, we got Starcrash, and the Starcrash Blu-ray is amazing. So it's a double disc Blu-ray and DVD with so many extras. It's incredible.
It's
so
packed,
there are documentaries on here. But what's great is the historian that they've got, Stephen Romano. So he's written the booklet in here. It's a very good booklet. He's also done not one commentary track, but two.
Yeah.
He's got so much to say about this film that he couldn't fit it all in on one track. And I think, and I'm not aware of any other examples of that, where a film has two commentaries by the same person.
Well, I have Troy Gwynn and I of the Nashicast. We've felt the desire to do that for a couple of films that we've done tracks for, but we've never broached the subject with the producers of the discs. So yes,
yeah, I mean that's quite a bold move to do that. But he's clearly the world's biggest fan of Starcrash, and he talks about how he researched it for years and he was going to write a book and blah blah blah. So that's why I don't want to go into too many behind the scenes details in the podcast today, because I really would urge everybody, if you haven't seen Starcrash, to first of all watch Starcrash as soon as possible, but ideally buy this Blu-ray and just glory in all these special effects documentaries, interviews, commentary tracks, just everything. It's really great, and the picture quality is great. The only thing that's really missing from all of these extras is an interview with David Hasslehoff, and I don't know why, because that guy will seem to do anything for money. So why nobody got him on board, I don't know. Perhaps he's...
My sneaking suspicion is it was one of two things: scheduling conflicts and or too high a dollar price asking point.
Yeah, that's true. He did say, there's a quote in Matt Blake's book. He says, I disagree with him twice in this statement. So he says, it was the worst movie ever made. I thought Piranha 3D was the worst movie, but no, I was wrong. There's Starcrash. For that one, people actually waited in line at Comic-Con with the poster, and I said, what kind of medication are you on? Now, first of all, Piranha 3D is fabulous.
I enjoy the hell out of it, yeah.
I think he might be thinking of Piranha 3 Double D, which is the one that he's in. Because the first Piranha 3D is really good, but David Hasselhoff appears in Piranha 3 Double D, so perhaps that's where the confusion has come in.
Could be, yeah.
But also, Starcrash is not the worst movie ever made.
Oh.
David Hasselhoff has done far worse things in his own career that could qualify for that one.
Yes, please
but he also
take any random episode of Baywatch. Yes.
Well, that as well, yeah. Or what was that awful thing he did? Baywatch After...
Baywatch After Dark or Baywatch Nights or something like that, yeah.
That was super weird. Like Baywatch became the X-Files. That was really weird.
I know. And it's so clearly that's what the producers were thinking is, we'll take advantage of the popularity of the X-Files in the 90s, and we'll do this. And they, if you've ever watched an episode, by the way, people, I recommend watching an episode of that Baywatch Nights show. I think that is the title of it, just to see how low a budget can be and still be broadcast on television. It's amazing. It's
really funny because it's obviously they thought, well, you know, he's saving people and swimming around in the sea all day, but what does he do at night? Well, there's a whole extra show. But hang on, presumably sleeping, because if he's going out fighting aliens at night, he's not going to have the strength to swim and rescue drowning.
Well, you would think
surfers.
So. Yeah, exactly.
So you know, his day job is going to suffer. And that's clearly not something they thought through. But anyway, so he says, just to finish off on this quote thing here, he says, we shot in Bari in South Italy, in a cave, and I got food poisoning. So for 2 weeks I was really ill. It was an all-Italian crew, and even when I watch it to this day, I don't know what it's about. I will give him that. This is a film that is quite bizarre in a number of ways. So I've got a couple of different plot summaries I thought we could go through. I've got one from Matt Blake's book, And I also, because this was an AIP production, although ultimately not distributed by AIP, there's quite a lengthy description of Starcrash in the recent book. What's it called? It's so big. Hang on, I'll pick it up. So I picked up the book, The American International Pictures, A Comprehensive Filmography, which is a really good history of AIP, if you're into that kind of thing. So I recommend that one as well.
Well, almost any synopsis you use will have to leave out things, because the movie is just dense packed with all this bizarre extraneous information, and if you tug on any individual hanging thread, you can spend way too much time down rabbit holes that only tangentially affect anything on screen, and part of that is because the plot of this thing is a mishmash of like half thought out ideas and kind of half remembered moments from movie serials and science fiction novels and comic books. So
there's definitely a kind of Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers kind of feel to this thing as well. Definitely.
The script's a mess. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's, I described the script of The Black Hole earlier as a mess, but the reason The Black Hole is a mess is a completely different reason from why Starcrash is a mess. What this is Starcrash's script feels like a story idea, a plot kind of assembled from randomly post-it noted ideas that were jotted down and then assembled into some kind of linear form in the dark. I mean, it just makes there's no logical progression from scene to scene or from idea to idea. There's a basic story, but if you examine it very closely at all, and if you ever at any point in the story look back and try to understand, well, wait a minute, that you realize that none of it makes any damn sense whatsoever. No, but it's fun. That's the difference, I suppose. You have a lot of fun. Now, apparently, so when Roger Corman saw this film, he felt it was a bit flabby, and he trimmed 5 minutes out. So there is an Italian kind of original cut, and then there's the cut that we're more familiar with, which is the one that comes on the Blu-ray. Yeah.
And I did wonder whether Luigi Cozzi had managed to do a restoration of his cut for the Italian Blu-ray, but no, the Italian Blu-ray is exactly the same version that is on the American Blu-ray. However, what you do get on both versions are the deleted scenes.
Yes.
And I have watched some of them. I didn't manage to get through all of them. There are a lot.
Oh, I recommend all the deleted scenes because...
But the ones that I did watch, it didn't seem to be adding much to the understanding of the story, because I did wonder whether we were missing something major that would somehow make it all make sense, but I don't think,
nothing like that.
I don't think that's what's really been cut. But
what was cut out was extraneous details and just things that kind of added either color or another odd element here, there, or yon. Which is why I wish there was a way to kind of take all those deleted scenes and edit them back into a cut of the film. I would love to see that, because as far as I'm concerned with Starcrash, the more the merrier, and the longer the cut, the better. If there's a 3-hour cut of this squirreled away, I'm willing to pop the popcorn and just go ahead and watch it. So. Yeah,
some enterprising person could take all the deleted scenes and then put them all back in if they wanted to, but I'm not going to do it.
I wish someone would. I really do.
You never know. There's that. There's a website. Is it called Fan Edits? That has a lot of that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's true. I haven't even thought to look there.
So maybe somebody has. That might be worth a look. Just like the people that have done the original Star Wars restorations that you can get, the original trilogy stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe there's an original Starcrash out there. But so let's have a go. So we've got. We see at the beginning of the film some guys on a spaceship, and they are doing kind of spaceshipy things, and everything's very official, and then they're approaching this planet, and then all of a sudden they are attacked by what Matt Blake describes as they're attacked by a lava lamp.
He's not the only person to describe it that way. Yeah,
there are all these red blobs that are suddenly floating around all over the ship, which sends them all sort of mad, it seems. But some escape pods get fired off and that's kind of the beginning of the film, right? And then we get a traditional Star Wars crawl that gives us a kind of an introduction. Which, if he hadn't seen he must have seen Star Wars. Like, I know he hadn't seen Star Wars by the time when he was writing this, but by the time he was editing, he must have seen Star Wars.
Oh, I think
to
so,
be able
yeah.
to know to do that that crawl up the screen like that. But so we get a bit of a story about the evil Count Zarthan, Zarthan, he's head of the League of Dark Worlds, and so we get a load of blurb about that. And then we cut to the beautiful Stella Star and her partner in crime, Acton. So let's start with Stella Star. So Stella Star, Caroline Munro, and this ties in with something we were talking about last time with character names. They've really made an effort here to give them proper kind of B-movie sci-fi names.
True.
Stella Star and Acton, which I think is very good. Caroline Munro is dubbed in this movie.
Yeah, by Candy Clark. Yeah.
Oh, is that who it is?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
was this dub done in America then? Do you think?
I don't know for sure. Candy Clark recorded her dubbing in America, that's for sure, in L.A. But as for the question has always been, why the choice to do that? I mean, because Caroline Munro has a perfectly wonderful voice as it stands. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing
she gets dubbed a lot in her career.
I know, it's very odd. She was dubbed in Captain Kronos, Vampire Hunter, and I don't understand it because I think she has in the movies that she did where you can hear her voice from the same period, you're like, well, there's nothing wrong with her voice other than the fact that she has, a British accent. I don't know.
It's weird because I've met Caroline Munro a few times. So it's weird hearing that voice coming out because it's just not her. What's even funnier, I'm doing some stuff at the moment on another film that she's in called I Don't Want to Be Born, a sort of Joan Collins horror film, and the voice that they've given her in that is just hilarious. It sounds absolutely it's just completely the wrong voice coming out of her face, even worse than this one. It's bizarre. But I think everybody else is pretty much doing their own voices here. Acton does sound like Marjo Gortner to me. Now Marjo, fascinating character whose backstory is just incredible.
Yes.
And I don't know, have you ever seen his documentary?
No, I've only seen excerpts. Marjo Gortner, for those who don't know, was his parents raised him to be a preacher, an evangelical preacher here in the United States. So as a child, he was this traveling preacher, and that was the family business. When he became an adult, he continued doing this throughout his childhood, and when he became an adult, he decided that he wanted to kind of blow the lid off the scam that was this kind of traveling roadshow evangelical thing. And so there was a document. He contacted some people, and they made a documentary about him. And the documentary won a number of awards. I mean, it was very well received, and he kind of used that as a launching pad to get himself out of that life and start a movie and TV acting career.
Which depending on how you feel about B movies, was either a bit of a flop or a triumph, because he's only is he in Starcrash, but he's also in Food of the Gods.
Earthquake. He's a crazy person in the big disaster movie Earthquake.
And then didn't he end up in some soap in the 80s?
Oh, I don't even remember.
Not Dallas or Dynasty, but something like that. Like one of those American, like what were some of those other shows? Anyway, one of those that I never saw because I was too young. But I think he ended up doing one of those in the 80s, and then he's kind of just disappeared. But yeah, really interesting guy. The look that they've given him in this film is really odd. I mean, that is his own curly hair. He's got quite a tight perm. Yeah. But I think that is just his hair. But he's also got this kind of fake tan, and he looks just a little bit weird. It makes his teeth glow just a little bit too much.
Let's address this right now. And this is something that we need to talk about, because if you come to this film, first of all, if you've seen this film, you know where I'm going with the makeup idea. If you haven't, let's have you brace yourself, because no one in this film except the women look physically natural as far as their skin tone is concerned. And I'm not just talking about the character that pops up later who's got green skin and crap like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that for instance, David Hasslehoff is wearing enough makeup to be RuPaul. I mean, this is simply a fact, okay? And I don't know why this choice was made. I don't know what the deal is. Don't get me wrong. I'm assuming that, like a lot of things, when you're making a science fiction film, is you're going, okay, look, we can be creative, we can be a little over the top, we can be a little, nuts if we want to be here, because we're talking about a scenario in which, we're not on Earth, we're in the far-flung future, we can do all kinds of crazy crap. But when you think about the fact that these makeup, the makeup on these characters draws so much attention to itself at times that you kind of get distracted, and so it's another one of those odd little bitty. I mean, it's very minor. I wouldn't call it a misstep, but an odd choice that adds something to the movie, but what it adds doesn't necessarily help it. It's just kind of an odd distraction at times. But then again, at this point with Starcrash, the more the merrier. The crazier the crap that you throw on the screen, I'm almost glad that it's there, simply because that's just another insane thing. It's like, do you need nipples on a robot? No, you don't, but you do it because it's Starcrash. So it's funny. So like if we were going to be looking at this film as to see whether there was any potential for romance for Stella Star, she's basically got two guys to choose from, and they both have quite tight perms and more makeup on than she does. Exactly.
But I think the main romantic relationship that seems to develop is between her and her friendly robot, the Southern Sheriff L.
Yeah.
Who sounds like what's his name? Is it Sheriff Pepper from the?
From the Bond films. Yes.
Bond films. It's like if that guy got turned into a robot.
I described him as a Texas moron. That's what it sounds like.
Have you both gone mad?
I only have logic and emotion circuits. No room for craziness. We all have been assigned to a top-secret Imperial mission. We must now leave and set acting free.
But what's interesting, of course, is that inside the robot suit was Caroline Munro's husband.
Yes.
So that might explain why they have the best chemistry out of anybody in the film.
Could be.
It's pretty funny. And I believe he agreed to do that job basically so he could just go with her and be with her on set. He does get a cameo as himself. I think he's the prison guard who lets Acton, out of his little prison tube. Like Acton just comes rising up out of the ground. And,
I know.
That guy with the guy that lets him go, that's also Caroline Munro's husband.
Well, the thing we should emphasize is that there are so many images and ideas that are borrowed from all kinds of other pieces of science fiction, and not just visual science fiction either. I mean, the first thing you hear when the movie starts is someone over inside the spacecraft, someone paging, I think, what is it, like Major Bradbury or something like that. And then you can notice that the name of the spacecraft that the movie starts on, the one that gets attacked by the lava lamp, is the Murray Leinster. And Murray Leinster is
what is that?
Oh, Murray Leinster was it was kind of the pseudonym name for a science fiction writer of the pulp era. Wrote a lot of great stuff. So
I did wonder what that was.
He published stuff in astounding stories and stuff like that. He wrote a lot of stuff, and so that is just another little Luigi Cozzi thing where he's pointing to the pulp origins of a lot of the almost all of the stuff that you're going to find in this movie.
Yeah. That's funny. I hadn't noticed that. Anyway, we've got off track already because we've only just got past the opening credits.
See, this is what happens.
Yeah, the music, of course, provided by John Barry, and it's such a great theme.
Oh, love the score. The score is lovely.
Of course, I don't know whether it's just because we know it's John Barry, but there's a lot of Bond-sounding riffs in this soundtrack.
Well, we would not be the first to
me more
note.
Bond. Yeah.
Yeah, but it sounds like he wrote this right after, apparently, he wrote the score for Moonraker, and there are more than a few similarities between the Moonraker score and this. So,
speaking of Star Wars ripoffs, now a lot of Bond, because I write for Cinema Retro magazine, and So years ago, we had a couple of like social things together, and all those guys, for them, Moonraker is the worst of all the James Bond films. And
It's
like
close. It's close for me. It has a great opening 45 minutes, and then just goes off the rails. But
for me, Moonraker is my favourite James Bond film. So you can imagine how that went down at the Cinema Retro staff Christmas dinner. But I love Moonraker.
Well,
but that Moonraker,
couldn't everybody get together and hate on A View to a Kill? I mean,
well, for me, Octopussy is the worst one by far.
Oh, I disagree.
But,
I disagree sharply.
yeah.
I'd love to have that conversation as a podcast with you, because I think Octopussy. Everybody always points to the same two things in Octopussy, and I'm like, well, if you're gonna pull those two small things out of Octopussy, trust me, let's go into detail on A View to a Kill, because holy God.
Yeah. Well, but ultimately, I'll watch any Bond film and enjoy it. I love them all. But anyway, so he's just the Starcrash theme is far more reminiscent of Bond than of Star Wars. Although apart from the very sort of specific riff of the Starcrash theme, which I'm sure I will cut in right now. You can kind of sing along. Star crash, it's a star crash.
There are no official lyrics, people. Do not feel that you have to accede to Adrian's sad lyric writing here.
Any good theme is one that you can sing the name of the film to, or TV show to. That's a known. That's like an industry secret for composers for television and film. They write stuff so that you can sing the name of the show to it. That's definitely
Lord.
a
And
thing.
now I'm trying to put lyrics to Gilligan's Island's theme or the $6 Million Man's theme, and I'm having trouble.
Oh well, that's another podcast. But anyway, so the film begins properly with Stella Star and Acton. Now apparently they're space smugglers, so this is clearly so Stella is like Barbarella meets Han Solo.
Right.
And Acton, I guess he's supposed to be the sidekick. So he's like the Chewbacca, but he's also like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Because he's got some kind of force thing going on. And he also appears to be completely asexual. Like there is absolutely zero chemistry between them at all. Despite the fact that she is gorgeous and spends quite a lot of the film in a kind of space bikini.
Mm-hmm.
Not very she's in prison and she's like having to carry stuff and put stuff into these furnaces, and all the people around her are wearing these rags, and she's wearing this kind of leather bondage bikini gear.
Yes.
Which is just the most impractical clothing.
And for reference, by the way, of course, that whole prison sequence where they're taking those glowing balls and putting them into a pit, some kind of furnace thing. That's straight out of an old Flash Gordon serial, man. That's exactly what that is. Be.
Yeah, it's really funny. So anyway, there's zero chemistry. So Acton appears to be asexual, but they are space smugglers, and they are being chased by the green guy. What's his name? Thor. And the robot L, the Sheriff Pepper. And so they're being chased, but they're going to do this maneuver to get rid of this tail, and they jump into hyperspace basically, and the hyperspace effect is pretty funny. They're trying to pull off the kind of going into warp speed kind of thing that you see in Star Trek, but they're basically using what looks to me like video feedback to create it, where you point your video camera at the monitor and you get this feedback loop. That's kind of what they're doing there.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
So it doesn't look great, but anyways, they jump into hyperspace, they come out of hyperspace, they are high-fiving each other because she's the best pilot in the galaxy, apparently.
Because they can push buttons, exactly.
Yeah, you don't really see much that... but then there's a weird thing. They get pulled into the kind of gravitational pull of a neutron star or something, and they're like, oh no, we're going to explode. So she presses a button, and then the main part of their spaceship just gets jettisoned and floats off, and they fly away in just this little bit they've got left, and they're like, woohoo, we're the best. And I'm just thinking, hang on, what
What did you just
Do
throw
you mean
away? Yeah.
Do you mean you didn't need that the whole time? It's massive.
Well,
but it didn't
here's
work.
one of the weird things about it. First of all the dialogue in this segment of the film is miserably bad. I mean, just
It is.
incredibly inane and terribly written. Honestly, you could almost rearrange any of the dialogue from any of the characters into random order, and it would make as much sense as it does when you're watching the film in the order it's supposed to be. But one of the things that seems to have been lost, it seems to me that surely if they're smugglers, the thing that they jettisoned must have been what they were smuggling, and therefore it's that kind of a situation where once again we're talking about how as a smuggler you end up being caught, but you're not caught with the goods because you managed to get rid of them. Almost a reference to something that is talked about with Han Solo in Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I keep thinking that they're going to reference that, and they never do. And I wonder if it's because that's just something that they weren't sure they could pull off in the special effects. Or, I mean, I don't. So let's not talk about it, because if we talk about it, then somehow we have to produce the image on screen. And what if we can't? I don't know.
But if it would be like Han Solo jettisoning most of the Millennium Falcon,
Yeah.
and all he's got left is the cockpit. they just seem to just let most of their ship just drift off for no apparent reason. But then it didn't work anyway because Thor and Elle catch up.
Yep.
And they are under arrest. Meanwhile, I think we kind of cut away to. I'm getting a bit lost already in the story. I'm not necessarily telling things in the same order. But they're given the job of investigating whether the fate.
Hold on. The one thing while they're after they've escaped,
this is
before
before
they get caught up with, they rescue. They run across a little ship, and they end up rescuing a survivor from that ship. Before they're captured by the pursuing cops and carried off to prison.
That was it.
That ends up being the one of the surviving shuttle ships that got away from the Murray Lannister at the beginning when it was being attacked by a lava lamp. So yes, and so initially they're sent to prison. So I've just mentioned she's in some kind of hot, sweaty furnace prison in her bikini, which I guess it is probably quite appropriate given how hot it was in there. But yes.
they've got to keep putting these. It reminded me of Futurama, where the fuel that they have is like these neutron, I don't know what they are, neutron balls or something that they have to put into the furnace. It's a bit like that. And Stella manages to basically effect an escape, and the whole place gets blown up. Although she gets caught again anyway, I think. Doesn't she just get caught again?
Yeah. So they effect an escape, and then once they're through the power of jump cut, they're actually just outside, and then they're picked up again by Thor and Elle, because. But
this time, you're going to go on.
Well, it seems that the reason they're being picked up is the Emperor of the Universe wants her and Acton to help in the fight against the evil Count Zartharn, and this is because of that survivor that they found on that jump ship. So it would appear, and this is all information dropped into our ear in the most ham-handed fashion imaginable. Apparently Zartharn has created a kind of devastating planet-sized weapon that will allow him to rule the universe, because Death Star quote unquote
sounds familiar.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But no one knows where it's located, because it's planet-sized, and those things are easy to hide.
And I think it's actually hidden inside a real planet. Or something.
So the smugglers
somewhere in the haunted stars, I think they say.
Yes. The smugglers are forced to accompany their captors, Thor and Elle, the robot, on the search through the haunted stars. This is more information dropped into everybody's ear by Acton, who seems to just know whatever the plot needs him to know. And if they succeed, they'll be pardoned. By the way, if they should, while they're doing this, stumble across the Emperor's son, the Crown Prince, who was on that ship, the Murray Lannister, that was attacked by the lava lamp, they should probably bring him back too. So,
Yeah, and of course we haven't mentioned that the Emperor of the universe, which is, you've got to be a dictator, right? To call yourself emperor of the universe.
Yeah, I would think so.
I mean, that's not going to be a nice guy. But
even
all he
Queen,
seems
even Queen only called themselves princes of the universe, for God's sake.
exactly, yeah. And he's just he's sitting there on his throne with his cape, and this is none other than Christopher Plummer himself.
Having a ball.
Now, depending on what source you read, he either did 1 day on this film or 3 days. I've seen it said both ways, but either way, he's basically on one set, and I think we first meet him by way of a kind of Star Wars style hologram, which is basically actually just his image being laid over the other image. Nothing quite as fancy as the actual real holograms that we see.
Don't give away
There's
the
no
secrets.
fuzzy lines.
Oh, you're telling
There's
people
no fuzzy
how they
lines
do
or
this. Yeah.
No, it's just there he is. So he's talking to them, and he's very placid, and he just seems like a lovely guy. But I would be just nervous about somebody who calls themselves Emperor of the Universe.
Well, especially one who dresses that way, because my God.
Yeah, it's like, is the cape really necessary?
Yeah, once you're wearing a cape, we're worried.
Because I mean, they're basically him and Count Zarthan are basically just two sides of the same evil dictator coin. You've got the benign dictator on one hand, and then you've got the Darth Vader on the other hand. They're both wearing capes. Of course, Zarthan is dressed more like Dracula.
Yes.
Played by Joe Spinell, a man whose face is quite unique.
Joe Spinell's face, I love him. He's always a great actor, but at the same time, Joe Spinell's face always looks like it's oozing sweat and pizza grease. It's never a good look, especially when he gets all head up and is playing crazy. And boy, this movie gives him the opportunity, man.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got the kind of face that only his mother would have loved, and even then, I mean, it might not have always been easy for her. But no, it's really funny. Again, just sort of random casting. Here's this guy from The Godfather and like Maniac and stuff, and now here he is strutting around as the evil count, head of the League of Dark Worlds. So I think his basic plan for his life is that he wants to become the Emperor of the Universe, but we can't have that because we've already got a nice Emperor of the Universe.
Yeah, and this guy is dressed in black, so clearly his fashion sense, while it may be better, it does connotate problems. So
it's better the dictator you know than the dictator you don't know.
True, very true.
I think that's basically what's going on here. So anyway, off they go to rescue the son of the Emperor, find that weapon, destroy it, and basically save the universe. Now, at some point in here, and I've already forgotten where this fits in, and I've seen this film,
I've seen this movie
numerous
so many
times.
Yeah.
At some point, I think they go to a planet, and she gets caught by Amazons.
Oh yes.
They go to, I think so. Oh no, I remember now what it is. So they know that there were 3 escape pods, and they've all gone to different planets. So I think they're trying to track them down. And they already know about one of the escape pods because that was the one that they found the guy in who was unconscious. So they follow another one and they get to this other planet, and the escape pod is crashed, and they're looking around, and then Stella gets captured by women who also happen to be just basically wearing bikinis.
Yes.
And she's landed on some kind of Amazon warrior planet.
True.
And they seem furious with Stella about something, and I'm not entirely sure what they're so cross about. But they want to kill her.
Yeah,
and
they seem all head up, and they definitely do not. It's Elle that they have a lot of animus toward. The Queen there has some severe hatred for Elle, and they blow the shit out of him.
Yeah, and and I don't really understand why. But so she manages to. So Stella gets taken into their. She's caught, and she meets the Queen. She then manages to escape.
I gotta tell you, I shouldn't be enjoying this, but listening to your confusion while attempting to relate the tale of this film, this is manna from heaven, man. This is great.
Yeah, it's so difficult. So anyway, so she manages to escape, but of course the Queen has got a secret weapon, which is this huge statue.
I refer to it as the giant, poorly stop-motion animated robot.
So this is where we get to the Harry. This is our first proper Harryhausen scene. And so Stellar Star gets chased across the beach by this big lady robot.
Yes.
And as you already mentioned, we definitely know she's female. Because this seems to be a planet of all women. We never find out what did happen to the guys in the crashed pod, by the way.
Nope.
I don't know. I imagine that they're just off somewhere having a lovely time, being the only men available on the planet. Or maybe they've been held as slaves to perpetuate the species. I don't really know. There's a whole thing. These women remind me, I think we talked about this last time, of Ator, the fighting eagle.
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole thing in there where he gets captured by a race of women. And all the women have to fight over who gets to mate with Ator, because there are apparently not very many men around. So maybe something similar has happened on this planet. But anyway, so Stella has to escape the giant robot, and Acton. Not Acton. Where is Acton at this point? Is he? I think he's still. Oh no, he's back up on the spaceship.
Yep,
isn't
he's
he?
on the spaceship.
He's on the spaceship with Thor, and
this is when we find
Caroline,
out Thor is a traitor.
Thor is a traitor. He's clubbed Acton round the head. But as we find out later, Acton knows the future. So
I know. God,
but he still didn't know he was going to get hit round the head. Or maybe he did. I don't know.
Maybe he knew that he had to be hit on the head for the next part of the film to happen. I don't know.
And because they kind of have a fight. I don't know. But anyway, so Thor is a traitor. And then, so does Stella have to fight Thor? I can't remember.
There is a fight with Thor, but Acton wages it after he, pops
that's
it.
Acton.
Floor, yeah.
Acton comes around and defeats Thor. So now we've got Acton, Stella, and Elle.
Yeah, and at this point we should probably apologize. Just honestly, people, if you feel like we've lost the plot,
worst.
It's impossible to maintain the plot of this thing because really in this film there is no logical progression from scene to scene or from idea to idea. When an explanation or a solution to a problem was needed, it just seems like Luigi Cozzi inserted a line of ridiculous dialogue, had the characters smile at each other, and just kept the damn thing moving. Because it's like, if you ever slow down, then surely somebody's going to figure out that we don't know what we're doing here. So a lot of the dialogue.
I do apologize. This has got to be the worst podcast plot summary of all time.
Oh, when dealing with this film, how could there be a good one? Let's be blunt.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to refer back to the other book, the AIP book that I mentioned, it says here, Starcrash is trashy, corny, ridiculous, primitive, and about 10 times more fun than its serious prototype.
Yeah.
And it is true. It is. It also it calls the film as a big, bad, sci-fi spectacular, loud, garish, nonsensical, even self-contradictory, with bizarre images and impossible narrative ambushes predominating. Yes, that's basically
ambushes.
it.
Oh, that's my new favorite descriptive phrase for this, narrative ambushes, yes.
So trying to describe what happens from scene to scene is pretty tricky. But basically, so we get to the point where we're just left with our three heroes, Caroline Munro, Acton, and Elle. And they've escaped the planet of the Amazon women, and then they go to they know where the last escape pod is, and then they go to the last one. I think, don't they have to survive? Now it's their turn to get attacked by the lava lamp.
Yeah. Because
they finally found the planet where this weapon is, and the weapon is some kind of psychic weapon that makes people go crazy.
It is essentially the lava lamp, yeah.
Yeah. Visually it's a lava lamp, but they're all clutching their heads like it's some kind of psychic weapon. It even seems to affect Elle, who doesn't have a brain because he's a robot. Acton seems to be fine because he's on another plane of existence.
Apparently.
So it would appear. And so anyway, they touch down and Acton, they get separated again, or does Acton stay on the ship again? because it's only Stella and the robot
It
who
depends
go.
on which portion of the film you're attempting to describe.
Well, so Stella and Elle touch down on this planet and immediately get attacked by cavemen.
Oh yeah,
And
okay.
I can't remember where Acton is at this point.
Acton is still up on the ship.
He stays in the ship. Even though he's got magic powers that
And the ability to see the
easily,
future.
and he can see the future. He just sits up there and lets. So Elle gets smashed to bits, which is actually quite violent. And he's just completely obliterated. And Stella, who, despite apparently being this great fighter and pilot and whatever, she is quite easily captured and tied up and taken to a cave. The same caves, possibly, that we've seen in every other film that had a cave in it so far this season.
It's possible.
But luckily, there is a guy wearing a gold mask who is peeking over the rocks and looking and watching. And he waits until it looks as though they're about to kill Stella, or I don't know what they're going to do, eat her,
Possibly.
make her their queen. I'm not sure. But he then pulls out his laser gun, and he turns out to be, and he rescues Stella. This is, of course, none other than
David.
Simon.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
No,
You're going with the character name. I'm impressed. So.
David Hasslehoff. But here we go again, as we mentioned before, character names. We've had Stella Star, Acton, Zarthan, and Simon. Like, did he run out of sci-fi names here?
That's a good question.
Yeah, bit of a disappointing. But so he's the sole survivor of the crashed pod, and he's wearing this gold mask that, oh no, wait, he doesn't have a laser gun. He shoots lasers out of the mask's eyes.
Yes, and it did not escape my notice that mask is very much a copy of the way the Zardoz head looks in that particular John Borman film. So.
It does look like Zardoz. But then, so he's got this great weapon, apparently, that he can shoot lasers out of his eyes. But then when they get attacked by the cavemen again, he just drops it and runs off.
Because it's lost its power. It's out of its charge now. And it's like, well, damn, have you been using this thing a lot? Or what?
I mean, this is like in any film ever when you see somebody who's run out of bullets and they just throw their gun away. And you're always thinking, what?
Keep it on.
Just, keep hold of it. It could be useful. You've now got nothing.
True.
So, yeah, that was all pretty funny. And then meanwhile, while that's happening, so they realise now that Simon has been looking this whole time for where the weapon is, and he couldn't find it. He searched everywhere, apparently. But then Acton comes along, and then he goes, oh no, it's just around here. And they just go around another corner in the cave.
Oh yeah, it's right.
They find
it's right
the entrance. They find the entrance to Zarthan's secret weapon. So all three of them go in, and this is where Zarthan is waiting for them, even though he's got a spaceship. But for some reason he's now here. I don't know whether he saw them coming. I'm not entirely sure, but he's there anyway.
Who knows, man? Who knows?
And he gives them a bit of a speech about how he's better than them and stuff.
Your standard bad guy speech, yes.
Yeah. But then he sets his robots on them, and this is where... So he's got these two... They look like clockwork... robots, and they actually look very similar to some of the robots that are used in the Star Wars prequels. I thought I can't remember what those kind of robots were called, but there's before they had stormtroopers, back in episode 1, they've got these robots. They kind of like them, but these are it's more great Harryhausen style stop motion animation, and they have to fight these robots. These robots have got swords, which it just seems a little bit old-fashioned. I mean, we're in a universe where they've got laser guns and they can shoot lasers out of their eyes, but he's just given these robots swords.
Well, I think this is an instance where what we're talking about here is, I mean, we're talking about this being a ripoff of Star Wars, and to a large degree, of course, all the elements that are being stolen from Star Wars to be used in this movie. One of them, of course, is the idea that there's, for some reason, people who are running around with laser swords, with lightsabers. And the whole idea that would be something you would incorporate in because it's like, oh, well, I guess that's what the audience is expecting now, right? I mean, that's exactly what they're looking for is not, it wouldn't be like that moment from Raiders of the Lost Ark when someone, pops up with a sword and just gets shot. which is
Yeah.
exactly what it would be like. You would just get
Yeah.
shot. At least in Star Wars, the concept of having this lightsaber able to block blaster fire gives you a reason for why somebody with this weapon could do some real heavy-duty damage.
Yeah.
I love the fact that we've left out the fact that Acton has already introduced the fact that he has a lightsaber. Clearly, he just went to an alternate reality and borrowed one from a
Yeah.
Jedi Knight or something. And so
Yeah.
we see him wailing away on the cavemen earlier, and now it's time to take on these two robots.
Yeah,
with
like
swords.
previously, his kind of magical powers, he's been demonstrating them just for fun by playing around with like laser light things on in his hand. So we know he can, because he doesn't appear to have like a sword handle or anything. It's just like it comes out of his hand.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's an extension of these magical powers that he's got. He's this kind of mystical whatever he is. So he fights the robots, and it's very exciting. I would have loved to. Oh no! Then doesn't he get hurt? Oh no, he gets. So he's winning, but then he gets hurt.
Yeah, he gets
so then
hurt.
David Hasselhoff somehow is able to pick up the lightsaber as well. So I don't know. it must be coming out of something.
finish off the robots somehow or another. Because
Yeah.
of course,
So actually,
Zarth Arn has just left these two robots to do this,
Yeah.
and has gone away.
he's like, "Do not leave. Do not let."
Yeah.
What does he say? Do not let them leave alive, or something.
Or yeah,
So so David Hasselhoff finishes them off, and Acton is dying, and he appears to be pretty much fine, but he's like, "No, just leave me here," because they've done something, so this place is going to explode. And they're like, "Come with us, we'll get you help." Oh no, I've seen the future. This is what I have to do now. So he's very much like Obi-Wan Kenobi, sort of deliberately giving up his life so he can move on to a higher plane or something. But doesn't really have a
so
good
strange.
reason.
It's just that he wants to write the character out, and he wants it to be kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi disappearing underneath his robes, and it's just one of those. Literally, Acton could have said, "No, go on. My life is over. There will be no more good chewing gum flavors produced. So I'm done with life." I don't understand. It would make as much sense. It's like,
because we could have really done with him and his lightsaber skills in the next scene.
Oh well, yeah.
But no.
The giant attack. Yes.
So they so they leave Acton behind, and they go back to see the Emperor of the Universe, and that's when we discover that Simon is, of course, the missing son. And that's so.
He is
dear.
the Prince of the Universe. So yeah.
He is, and he just didn't want to tell her. He thought it would be awkward.
Yeah, well,
So,
I would have thought the makeup would have given it away, but hey.
So this is where now the Emperor is ready to attack Zarth Arn.
Yes.
And
yes.
it's really funny. So they launch this attack, and it's really bizarre. So Zarth Arn's got this spaceship, which we see, and it looks like a hand. It's really cool, actually, the shots of it flying through space. I will say this, compared with Cosmos, which we talked about last time, the space miniature stuff, the flying stuff, is really good in this film. Yeah, he properly. It's quickly edited. There's camera movement, there's pacing, there's lasers. It's not the snore fest of Cosmos.
Yeah, I mean,
it's much more fast moving.
It's not anywhere near the level of sophistication or that you're going to find in Star Wars. But at the same time, it does have much more on the ball than Cosmos. That's for sure, because there's at least
much more.
Well,
there's
much more movement and
made.
action, and it's very clear that whoever is initiating these special effects has an eye toward trying to produce something that would be interesting to look at. So
he launches this attack, and sends all the. And this is the kind of attack on the Death Star moment.
yeah.
But what's really funny is that they've got these missiles that they fire at the place, and it smashes through the windows, and then just guys jump out with laser guns and start shooting.
Yes, wouldn't you think it would be logical you have the missile?
Yeah, if you can fire a
If
missile.
you could just put a lot of explosives inside the missile.
Yeah, this whole
Stop
thing
me
would
if
have
you
been
think I'm
over.
crazy here, but that seems like that would be much more effective than just putting a couple of mustachioed Italian dudes in there with guns.
Plus, also, if they've just smashed through the windows, I mean, I'm not a scientist or anything, but shouldn't that just have made everybody get sucked out into the vacuum of space?
That's what I would have thought, but apparently it doesn't happen in the black hole either. So hey, who knows anymore, man?
Because they just keep smashing the windows of this thing and then just carrying on fighting. It's really funny. And they look. I mean, that's the bit that specifically reminded me of something like the serials, particularly the costumes.
Exactly.
They're wearing those. They're wearing very similar hats to the style that we saw in Cosmos as well. This kind of leather helmets that just has that 1930s 40s kind of feel to it.
This is the segment where it's like a Flash Gordon or a Buck Rogers serial just transplanted into color and given a little bit more money.
So there's lots of shooting. It's quite a good scene. It's pretty exciting, but it fails. Like Zarthan wins, which is a good twist, I think. So like apparently, although he's the emperor of the whole universe, they've just wiped out his entire army. He's got nothing left. So that was it. That was his one chance to take Zarthan down, and he's failed. And they're just I nearly said Barbarella, Stella, and
Barbara Stella.
Yeah, and David Hasselhoff and the Count. I've just been watching this whole thing on the telly. I thought that, Simon and Stella would jump in a ship and go and join in, but no, they're just watching the whole thing on TV, and they're very disappointed. They're like, oh dear, that's it then. And then they're like, oh no, wait, there could be one more way to do this. And then I think it's David Hasselhoff turns to he gets the roll credit. Yeah, he gets the roll credits moment where he turns to his father and says something like, "You don't mean Starcrash."
Like we're supposed to know what the hell that is.
And they're all like, oh yeah, Starcrash, Starcrash. So Stella is the volunteer who's going to do the Starcrash. And so what it basically means is we're going to spoil the ending. Sorry.
Warning.
So they've got a flying city in space, and she's going to pilot this flying city and smash it into Zarthan's big floating fist. And that apparently is that's the Starcrash. That's it.
Okay, I'm sorry, but big floating fist. That is the correct way to describe it, but I've never conjured those words in that order before, so that's beautiful.
Thank you. That is the Starcrash. So there you go. But even though they're both basically just big spaceships.
Yeah.
So she manages to fly it in to his thing, and he gets killed, and that's the end. But she survives.
Yeah, they jump out. She and Elle, who's once again.
Elle's been rebuilt. Elle. So they had some scientists around who could quickly rebuild Elle and make him better than ever. He joins her, and they do the Starcrash, and there you go. And there's a happy ever after ending with with the camera just kind of slowly zooming in on the Emperor as he gives this monologue. I don't know who he's talking to because there's no one else in the room about how everything's going to be fine for now, but who knows, one day something.
Well, it's done. It's happened. The stars are clear. The planets shine. We've won. Oh, some dark force, no doubt, will show its face once more. The wheel will always turn. But for now, it's calm. And for a little time, at least, we can rest.
It's really funny because you can just imagine Stella and David Hasselhoff have walked off, and you can just imagine them sort of turning around and looking back and thinking, who's he talking to? Because they've long gone.
Because they're headed to the commissary for lunch, man.
Yeah, exactly. They're quite hungry now, and Elle's gone off to get a bit more of it, get his oil topped up. And there you go, and that's the end of the movie. and that was the worst possible plot synopsis. But
Oh no.
this is not a film to be watched. It is not a film that you watch for the plot.
No, this is not a movie you watch for logic or sense or reason. This is a movie you watch for the experience of having watched it. This is madness. And
it's really fun just picking out all the influences. Obviously, the direct parallels with Star Wars are quite funny to notice, but just all the other stuff as well, like we've said, the Harryhausen stuff, the serials, all of that stuff is just really funny and very entertaining. So like I said, I only saw Starcrash for the first time within the last 10 years. This was not a film that I'd ever been aware of popping up on TV when I was a kid or anything like that. Was this a film that had more exposure in America, like back in the 80s? Was it something that you would have crop up quite regularly or anything like that? Probably.
Basically because I remember I didn't see it until sometime in the 90s, and by then it was kind of one of those legendary things that I had read about and that I knew was kind of a legendary bad film, the kind of thing that people talk about in hushed tones because you can't believe it until you see it. You really have to watch this thing. But I also do know a couple of people who caught this theatrically somehow or another in the late 70s and had essentially mental scars forever because of it. and that's exactly what I would expect. I mean, this is, if you caught this at a young age and saw the words, say you were a kid or a teenager and you went to the drive-in because Starcrash was part of the double feature and you sat through that movie, you weren't going to be puzzled. Yeah, you were going to be puzzled as well, but you were also just going to be peeved. You were not going to be thrilled with the ride that you had just experienced because that's not what you were looking for something along the lines of Star Wars. So I when I finally caught up with it, I was prepared for what it, obviously is, but I was not prepared for the effect it would have on me over time, to the point now where I absolutely love it. And I think of it as it's kind of like a puppy that just can't learn to not pee on the floor. It's fun and you love it, and there's no way to dislike it because it's too damn stupid to know not to pee on the carpeting again. It is what it is. I once described this movie as what you would get if an 8-year-old riffed on an issue of EC Comics Weird Science from the 50s. This movie is what his Pixie Sticks fueled imagination would create. This is the sugar rushing kid bursting with enthusiasm but short on talent and money making a damn movie. This is exactly what it is. This is kitchen sink science fiction pulp madness thrown up on the screen with not enough cash. And just, to be honest, the fact that this movie exists at all might actually go some distance towards proving to me that there is a God, because it's amazing.
Yeah, it is really, it's really fun. And like I said before, I've met Caroline Munro a couple of times, and one time I was lucky enough to be granted access to the green room of this big Hammer weekend that was being done probably, nearly 10 years ago probably. And Caroline Munro and there were loads of Hammer guests, and it was like one of the best weekends ever. So I just got to hang out with these people, and so I picked up a set of Spanish Starcrash lobby cards and I took them with me. I think there were like maybe, I don't know, 8 pictures, maybe possibly more, and I showed them to Caroline Munro and she thought they were great, and she signed all of them for me, free of charge, which I know is annoying for anyone who's
she's a sweetheart.
stood in line and paid for her autograph. But she signed each one of them. Some of them she signed Stella Star as well, which was very cool. I'll tweet some pictures of those. But yeah, so this film, I think because it got picked up eventually for distribution by Corman, it had a pretty good release schedule at the time. Like you said, people who caught it in the cinema. And Stephen Romano in the Blu-ray talks about he caught it in the cinema when it first came out. I did find a couple of reviews in Variety. They're quite negative about it, actually. But then they say, although the characterizations are a little bit more than cardboard cutouts, it's hard to fault actors when they're given lines like "I'll fix you" or "I hope they're friendly" to say. And it says that basically they're just poor imitations of what's been done before. So they were not particularly forthcoming. It did also get a release in the UK, interestingly. In fact, the review in the monthly film bulletin, what's really great is on the same page is the review for The Humanoid, which is our film we're doing next time.
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny. So they were both in cinemas at the same time in the UK. In the review in monthly film bulletin, the first sentence is "Alien Acton and his girlfriend, ace pilot Stella Star." And I thought, hang on, what? Did I miss something? Pretty sure they're not together. But anyway, but the review is actually really positive. It says, despite mediocre special effects and a clumsily protracted finale, Starcrash intermittently achieves a kind of lunatic appeal as it lurches pell-mell from one casually fabricated climax to the next. I think that's quite positive, really. Lunatic appeal. It says the plotting is unabashedly reminiscent of a pre-war serial. And we've covered that quite a lot. So yeah, pretty funny. Anyway, so mixed, I think it's fair to say, the reviews, but it's definitely become a cult classic now, and it's probably the film that Luigi Cozzi is the most closely associated with out of all of his movies. And I hope we do get to cover some of his other films on the podcast, because
it would be a blast.
I really enjoy. It's basically just his love for the genre comes through, no matter how cheap the production.
One thing I would like to point out: this film being what it is, if something is successful, especially in science fiction, then one of the things that happens with it is that it spawns fan fiction. And I have to admit that there may have been a dearth of it until roughly 2010, but there was published a book called Curved Space, The Adventures of Stella Star, and of course I own it because I'm insane. And
wow.
It's out of print now, I think. So if you seek out a copy, you may end up having to pay a lot of money for it. But it's a bunch of 9 or 10 short stories written by different authors, kind of continuing the adventures of Caroline Munro's character in the film. And gotta say, it's a lot of fun and completely nuts. I have a copy. Back years ago, I even had Caroline Munro sign my copy, and it's one of those things where if you're a true fan of Starcrash and you want more of this madness, and you can find a copy for a non-ridiculous price, Curved Space, The Adventures of Stella Star, is right up your alley. So it now also, because of that book, joins, Star Wars, Star Trek, all these other franchises out there with all these books that line the shelves. But, of course, Starcrash only has the one.
Wow, that's very cool. I didn't know that. There was a few years ago, there was an action figure of Stella Star released.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Which is it's kind of creepy. If you've seen that. But I know people who bought one. It's quite big, and it's basically too sexy. It's kind of troublingly sexy for a plastic toy.
Oh my goodness.
Is how I would describe it. And you can change its outfit. Basically the two different bikini things that she wears in the movie, you can dress her up in it. I mean, the whole thing just seems far too troubling. But it was very expensive. It's like about £100, like $150 or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Quite impressive for. But yeah, this I don't know, like 30 centimeters tall. So whatever that is in inches.
It's pretty tall.
Toy. And it was posable. You could adjust. Yeah, it's kind of slightly. But I'll tweet that out as well because it's it's kind of funny. But just I don't know. I would feel troubled having that staring at me in the corner of my.
Oh, and if you're worried that that Curved Space, that collection of short stories, would be some kind of renegade pirate thing. No. There was a foreword written by Luigi Cozzi himself, so it's authorized.
So he likes it.
So yeah,
that's cool. Thank you very much. Good to know. So I think there's probably other Starcrash related memorabilia out there. If you've got some, let us know.
True.
I know Luigi Cozzi was selling T-shirts of Starcrash in his shop, but I didn't get one mainly because I feel like I'm too old now to walk around with a picture of a girl in a bikini on my T-shirt.
I don't know, man. I wear some pretty strange T-shirts myself.
But the poster artwork and the alternative poster artwork for this film is really great. Even if in none of them does she look anything like Caroline Munro.
True.
But there's some great artwork that's associated with this movie that's worth checking out. And again, when I get the podcast actually out, I'll be tweeting some of that out because it's such a, it obviously stimulated the imaginations of the artists involved, and there's some really great stuff associated with the movie. But thank you, Rod. I think this might turn out to be our longest episode yet.
Possibly.
But there's, how could we not spend so much time talking about one of our favourite films, possibly?
True.
Yeah, no, Starcrash. So everybody who's listening, if you've never seen Starcrash, this is the one. I know we've covered like Planet of the Vampires. Yes, that's very good.
Yes, it's a very good film. Yes.
And Wild Wild Planet. Yeah, that's really good too. But if you could only pick one film of what we've done so far, I would say go with Starcrash. You will not be disappointed. You may be baffled.
Oh, you will be
not
baffled.
Be disappointed.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Please don't forget to do all the things that every podcast asks you to do. Leave us a review. Like us on whatever you're listening to this on. Subscribe. Tell your friends.
Buy advertisements for us in your locality.
Yeah, throw us some money.
Yeah.
Send out carrier pigeons with the podcast name tied to their legs. Whatever you can do. Let's get the word out there. Rod, thank you again, and we will be back soon to talk about another direct Star Wars ripoff. Thank you everybody for listening. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.